So today we're going to look at some of the best YouTube channels for learning Brazilian Portuguese, and at the end we'll look at how to fit these resources into a method and routine that will help you on your way to learning the language. The YouTube channels we're going to be looking at are specifically about learning Brazilian Portuguese. They're therefore great for actively learning the language and noting down new phrases, checking grammar points, that sort of thing. But you can obviously use them for immersion as well, as they are spoken in the language. We'll look at Brazilian YouTube channels purely for immersion in future videos. These will be divided into various topics so that you can find channels for areas that interest you, and the links are in the description below. Most of the channels we're going to look at today aren't listed in any particular order. They're all really good resources created by fantastic teachers and creators. However, the first two really do stand out, both because of their quality and the length of time they've been providing videos. The others in the list are fairly new channels that I haven't used personally, but I have checked on for this video. They're just starting out, so I thought it would be good to raise awareness of their channels, as they seem like very useful resources, and it's important that people providing these free resources are supported where possible, as this enables them to keep producing useful resources and helps them out for the great work they're doing. Now, the first channel we're going to look at today is called Speaking Brazilian Language School, and it's definitely one of the best YouTube channels for learning Brazilian Portuguese. It's probably the best, along with the second channel we're going to look at today. It's got lots of excellent advice on learning the language and videos explaining an array of different areas and topics, from the way to use certain expressions, grammar points, but also loads of interesting videos on Brazilian culture, geography, like the different regions, and just stuff like that. So it's a great resource just for learning in general, and it means that whilst you're doing that, you'll also be immersing in the language and picking up new phrases and getting more familiar with grammar, all that sort of thing. Now, the videos aren't spoken at full speed, which is absolutely fine. It helps, particularly when you're a beginner and you're going to the channel to learn specific things, such as to learn some new phrases or check on a certain grammar point. But because it isn't spoken at full speed, do just be sure to immerse in other materials such as films, podcasts, and even other YouTube channels where the language is spoken at a normal speed. As this way, you won't get a shock if later on you suddenly start listening to the language and it's spoken normally and your ears will already be adjusted to it. But even with that being said, this is still the perfect channel for learning new things and getting some sort of immersion in at the same time. It's worth using at any stage during the process, and of course it's going to be particularly helpful for beginners, but given how varied the topics are on the channel, you'll find there's new videos all the time on interesting topics relating to Brazil and the Portuguese language. One of the other great features of the channel is Virginia, who produces the videos and does everything with the channel, really. She provides subtitles in English and Portuguese, and they're in different colours. The English subtitles are slightly smaller and in yellow, whilst the Portuguese subtitles are in white and a bit bigger. And just when you're watching the video, this makes it easy to just focus on one or the other, depending on what you're wanting to do at the time. So that's a very handy way to either just focus on one, or if you're wanting to quickly check something, you can switch between the two. They're just there for you to use as you see fit, so it's a great feature of the channel. And as for using it to actively learn new phrases, there's loads of great videos about how to use certain expressions. This one here is a great example. It's called The Different Expressions Made with the Term jeito, which could be translated as the English word way. As you'll see in the video, there's lots of permutations to what it can mean according to the context of the sentence it's used in and that sort of thing. So videos like this are a great way for you to learn a decent number of new phrases in one sitting and in the context of full sentences. Now, the reason the English subtitles are not being discouraged is because these videos aren't solely for immersion. They're an excellent compromise if during the early stages you're wanting to immerse in materials where you can understand a lot of what's going on, but they are also just a great way to actively study the language and pick up new phrases. Now, Just as a final thing on that, do be sure to still spend some time immersing with videos at normal speed and without subtitles, as this is the most accurate reflection of the language you will encounter in daily life when speaking to Brazilians, and it's just very important for the learning process in general. The more we listen to a language, the more our brain becomes familiar with the sound patterns of that language. There's a book by Albert Costa called The Bilingual Brain, and in that he mentions some research that was done with babies who were either in the first few months or certainly within the first year of their lives. And the researchers basically, I don't know the methods they used, I think it's detailed in the book, but I'm no scientist. But basically, however scientists do this, they were able to monitor the brain waves, or what was going on in the brains of these babies, whilst they played two languages to them. And off the top of my head, I think it was Swahili and Turkish. And what they found by monitoring the brain waves of the babies was that they could tell that they were two separate languages. And so in other words, our brains are incredible at recognising sound patterns, and it's why it's vital to keep immersing in the language. Even when it feels frustrating and you don't necessarily feel like you're making improvements, in the background your brain is getting better and better at recognising the sound patterns of the language, and that's why we have these what feel like sudden breakthrough moments every now and again, when in reality it's more of a cumulative process where all the immersion we were doing has built up and we're getting very comfortable at recognising certain patterns of sound in the language. Back to the channels themselves, that's just about everything on Speaking Brazilian Language School. There is also a podcast, and the link for that will be in the description as well. It's another great resource, especially if you're on the go. So moving on to the second channel, it's Português com Marcia Macedo, and this, like Speaking Brazilian Language School, is probably the best channel out there. It's been going for a number of years and has loads of great videos. I won't go into as much detail because basically the points we've talked about for Speaking Brazilian Language School apply equally to Marcia's channel. It's an amazing channel, loads of videos on all the same topics as Speaking Brazilian Language School, on grammar, expressions, Brazilian culture, life, geography. You don't have to use just one channel. You could certainly use both of these channels as well as other channels. All of them have great videos. A good example on Marcia's channel is one on popular Brazilian sayings, and in that video, which we've got up here, you'll learn about obviously popular sayings in Brazil, but she also explains the history behind it, and it's just very interesting. And that extra context she provides is great for helping you to remember the phrases, because we learn things better when we can attach it to something. If you know the history of a certain expression or phrase, you stand a better chance of remembering it, just because of the extra context. Now, the subtitles on this channel are available in a wide range of languages. Portuguese subtitles are provided automatically. You can always listen without them and then turn on English ones for clarification, and just use it how you see fit depending on what your goals are on any given day. Now, for the rest, we won't go into as much detail. The rest of the channels we're going to mention are channels I haven't used personally, but I have looked at for this video. And these are relatively young channels just starting out. So by all means, go and have a look at them and support them as best you can by subscribing if you find them useful. Because these channels haven't been on YouTube as long as the others, there are of course less videos. But just from having a look at these channels the last few days, there's clearly a wide range of topics being covered, and this will only improve with time. So we've got here Português para Fora, which seems to have a lot of great videos. Tudo Bom, Português para Estrangeiros, another channel which seems to be growing and lots of great videos. Português com Camila. Falar Português Brasileiro. And Portuguese with Sugar. So Even though we've gone into less detail on those, that's more just because those channels aren't as old, but they do seem to have a lot of promising signs, lots of great videos, so do be sure to check those out. You can mix and match, and in terms of improving your listening comprehension, it serves your Brazilian Portuguese well to have various different sources, because obviously no one speaks exactly the same, so having that variety can only help. Just before we look at how to fit all this into a plan, it's worth just briefly mentioning that Speaking Brazilian Language School offer a mini course in Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation. It's completely free and takes just 7 days with a lesson or module each day. To develop your pronunciation in any language, all it really takes is to spend time listening to the language and repeating what you hear out loud now and again. But this course is a fantastic way to clarify certain things and make improvements to your pronunciation, and it will speed up that whole process for you. I tested it out at a point where I was fairly happy with my Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation, but knew I could make improvements, and I found it a great help for doing that, so I definitely recommend it. In terms of fitting the resources we've covered today into a plan for learning Brazilian Portuguese, there are 3 essential things you need to learn any language. These 3 things could be called different names based on personal preference, but they boil down to the same things. Now, these are the passive part of the process, the active part, and practice. The passive part of the process is perhaps most important in the sense that it's most likely to have been the missing ingredient, as when we learn languages at school, it's impossible to spend much time listening to the language in its normal form, at normal speed, and how it's used in daily life. And this is why, even though we perhaps learn how to conjugate some verbs and say a few sentences, when we actually hear the language properly in normal settings, we struggle to understand it. The active part is probably going to be the most familiar, in the sense that it does involve active study, but it doesn't have to be in the more traditional ways you may be used to from school. By all means, study grammar in isolation and verb tables if you enjoy that, as enjoyment is the most important thing, but you don't have to. The active part of the process for many people can just be a case of looking for new phrases and learning them, remembering them. Practice is just about having conversations, whether they're typed or spoken, with native speakers of that language or people who speak that language to the level of a first language. Ideally, anyway. Now, if at the start you're a bit tentative and want to develop your Brazilian Portuguese a bit more before having conversations, that's absolutely fine. You can just pose questions to yourself and think of how you'd respond and practice answering them. It may sound a bit odd at first, but it's absolutely fine and it is an effective way to improve. The most effective way for improving your fluency is to practice with other people, as it's the most immediate form and it will make your responses feel more automatic in future. But for many people, it can seem a bit daunting to start that straight away. Some people do advocate starting that straight away, but you don't have to. It's just personal preference. Now, with regard to the resources we looked at today, and as mentioned earlier, they are fantastic for the active part of the process. You can learn loads of new phrases, and they're even a fun alternative if you want to check a grammar point to looking it up in a textbook, and of course a much more cost-effective method for doing that. And of course they are also helpful for immersion, but they shouldn't be your sole form of immersion, as they are spoken a bit more slowly than the language normally would be. Over the coming weeks and months, there'll be more videos like this posted on this channel to help you learn Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese, as well as various other languages. If you'd like to look at some other free resources on the website, There's a resources section, and that gets added to weekly. There's general advice on language learning, and there's a tab specifically for Portuguese resources, focusing particularly on films you can watch to help improve your Portuguese, and each of these has links to relevant videos and articles that will add context to the film you've watched, and adding this context helps you to remember the phrases you've come across, and it just makes the whole process more enjoyable. If you'd like more detail on how to learn Portuguese, whether that's Brazilian Portuguese or European Portuguese, there's a How to Learn Languages guide, How to Learn Portuguese. Most of the resources in the book are centred on Brazilian Portuguese, but there are resources in there for European Portuguese as well. The guide goes into lots more detail, and it's a way for you to have everything you need in one place, with links to useful resources and a plan laid out for you. There's also a detailed section on the history of the Portuguese language. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and see you next time.